Hello and welcome back to the Masterclass, the tactical podcast. Oh, guys, we're sitting here obviously, and United haven't done it. As Rob said, obviously he wasn't confident. I wasn't particularly confident, but I thought we could get the result. I'm so gutted, Rob. Welcome back. Thank you to all the listeners for getting involved. Jump in the comments, give us all your questions because it's going to be some sort of therapy. We'll try and answer as many of them as we can. Rob, welcome back. How are you feeling?
Well, we all know how I'm feeling. Yeah, how you doing, Haider? And hello to everyone that's joined us for this somber live masterclass after a shocking display from Manchester United. I think when you look at the kind of balance of the group and you look at the 3 games that we won and the 3 games that we lost, I think it's fair to say that we deserve to go out tonight. I was worried that coming to a place like Leipzig on the final day would be a difficult ask if we were coming here to have to get something. So the idea was to try and qualify, obviously, by the 5th game, which really, when you look at PSG last week, Manchester United could have done that, could have achieved it, and they didn't. Tonight was an abject display, and we will talk about the tactics like we always do with Manchester United. I think the 3-5-2 was a fine way to set up when you look at the way the Leipzig set their game up. They were always going to play 5 across the middle. But Manchester United started badly. They were out of position. They played the 3 turned into a 5 almost immediately. You found Telles and Wan-Bissaka specifically, Aaron, getting sucked into the wrong position, which was where the first goal came from. Angelino just had a bus pass to just go into that area and just have nothing to kind of take him on. Great strike, but no challenge really. And the second goal was exactly the same. Wan-Bissaka didn't close him down. The ball comes across, and they managed to get it back into the middle of the box. It's 2-0. Another set of disasters for Manchester United. So we'll try and break it all down for you. I think when you concede 3 goals like we conceded tonight, you deserve to go out.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I'm going to read out a few comments. Ollie out started the game negatively. Guys, I want you to get all your comments in. I want to hit every single one. Even if you're Ollie in, Ollie out, we're just going to talk about it all. Okay, we're not going to hold anything back. We're going to have this non-reactionary, but we're going to try and have this conversation because it's important, because it's perhaps a very watershed moment for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Manchester United. Ben's asking, how is back 5 exposed early on? That was crazy. So much space. Absolutely. Joseph saying wrong lineup. We'll have a discussion about that. Lokesh, I'm feeling you as well. We're really gutted. Guys, get all your comments in. We'll try and answer them as much as possible. Tactical Roll here saying Nagelsmann is young but a brilliant tactician. You saw a difference between him and Ollie tactically. Yeah, I think that's not hard to disagree with. Let's start with the formation, Rob. Looked like a 3-5-2, but in reality, it was a 5-3-2. Almost like a flat back 5, honestly, in that first half. And worst possible start, as you said, we went a couple of goals down. For me, Wan-Bissaka is becoming a serious problem, whether he's playing in a back 4 or a back 5. Back 5, he gets exposed a lot more because he just doesn't understand the system. You saw today why Wan-Bissaka is never going to be a centre-back in a back 3 like a lot of fans want him to. You've seen the reason why United are, as reports suggest, looking at a right-back in the window. Trippier was mentioned, and I said the other day, we need someone who has something going forward. But defensively, Rob, Wan-Bissaka is a player that we associate with great defense, but anything when it's behind him or anything on the back post and he's at sea, this is a serious problem.
Yeah, one of the things we always say, isn't it, it's the kind of caveat with Wan-Bissaka, is that he's not so good going forward, but he's good at the back. And I think what we're actually seeing now this season, certainly, and I think at the back end of last season as well, is he's not actually that good at the back. He can tackle. He can make that read on the outside. But one of the things that we said in the Masterclass, I think 3 or 4 weeks running now, is that anything on the inside in the channel, he gets confused. He can't do it. So the first goal today, when that ball comes from right to left, he is way too narrow. He's looking inside at the striker between him and Lindelof. Now, Lindelof's got that, man. You've got to leave that to him. If you're the wing back in what is effectively a 3-5-2 and you're holding that shape, really, he was kind of holding the shape of what a right back would hold. You want the right back to close down the channel. But if you're the right back, then there's no one behind you in the shape. So he knew where Angelino was, and Angelino's coming from the touchline. So Angelino's got a mile of space. Wan-Bissaka has to deal with that. I don't care how old he is or how developed he is or any of those things. This is the basics of the game. And even when you're young, you're taught these things from a very young age, and you have to kind of see them out in role plays and scenarios. Now, United, to play this kind of 3-5-2, they've played it before, but you can see today the confusion in terms of the state of the system. So it's not the system's bad or the selection's bad. It's just what are the players doing within that selection? And for the first 2 goals, it was just rabbit in headlights. It looked like they needed 25 minutes to kind of realize they were even on a football pitch in the Champions League. I think the biggest issue tonight, 100%, is a lack of personality. And I think that is the underlying, continuing problem with Manchester United under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I don't actually have a lot of problems with Ole's tactics. People will constantly talk about him and say, he's not Pep, he's not Klopp, etc. Every week, same old thing every week. Today wasn't really about tactics. It was about his team going out there and having the personality from minute 1 to go and get the job done. And minute 1 means don't concede a goal in the first 5 minutes. The Champions League in this scenario where you need a draw, it's about keeping a clean sheet for 20 minutes. Keep it boring. Keep it tight. Keep the ball in the deck. Keep it simple. Give Leipzig nothing. But they didn't do that. And it does seem, we talk about Ole's way of developing the squad, that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's squad is not capable of keeping the ball for any period of time and keeping the ball on the deck and doing the simple stuff. And I think that is the indictment on Ole. It's not really tactical in terms of shape or players playing in or out of position or any of those kind of things. It's the connection between here and knowing what your job is. And it felt like today that Manchester United didn't know their job till about the 80th minute. I think, he's been given a lot of flack for rightful reasons the last day, Paul Pogba. But when Paul Pogba came on, he played football.
Yeah, it changed the game.
And the thing is,
if he started, you never know what would happen.
I'm not here to big up Paul Pogba because that's not what this is about. The whole point of it is that Paul Pogba is a technical footballer wanting to play technical football with other technical footballers. And 7 or 8 of them just reneged that responsibility today. I've been a big supporter of Harry Maguire over a period of time. I didn't think he led well at all today. I think in that third goal, in that moment, he has to go and help his goalkeeper. De Gea could have stood up stronger, and you can have your opinions about that, everyone. But ultimately the centre-back has to cover across the front post, and he just kind of let it go. So each goal had a moment of defensive lapse in terms of the thinking behind the game and what you're expected to do. But that's about personality. You have to go out there and prove it for your manager, for your fans, and to prove that you're good enough to wear the shirt for Manchester United. And I think tonight, the guys that went out there, they nearly staged them, a huge recovery, a magnificent last 10 minutes. But let's be honest, they didn't deserve it.
Rob, it's what I said last week, is that this United side, it's not sustainable to play football where you have a terrible first half. We got away with it against West Ham. We got away against Southampton. This is a very good side with a very good manager, extremely well drilled. This is a Champions League. This isn't playing a team near the bottom of the Premier League. And we got punished, and rightly so, Rob. And it could have been worse. It could have been 3. So we had our chances. I believe we had more shots than them. I don't have the exact statistic if anyone has that in the comments. But United, I've said it already, it's not sustainable, Rob, to play in short bursts, play for 20-minute spells and blow teams away. So we show we've got the firepower to do that. This is a group of talented players for me. And to not be able to do that for prolonged periods in games is a serious problem. We start games, I agree with you, it's a lack of personality. I'm not really going to blame Ole for the fact that players can't go out there and motivate themselves. They're professional footballers who are making hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. They should be able to go and decide for the Champions League between playing against a Kazakhstani team on Thursday or going to go and play Real Madrid at the Bernabeu in the Champions League. You should be able to motivate yourself. And these bunch of players can't do that. There's some questions here, Rob. Helen's got one. Do we blame the players or Ole? Because I think there's a lot of questions here. And Sakib's got a question here. At what point do the Man United board act and pull the plug on Ole? This experiment is pointless. And Lokesh has got a comment here as well, saying, I'll always back the manager, whatever the circumstances, but this is a watershed moment. I'm not confident in Ole compared to the Leicester game last season. This is a really important time. And for me, United had it in their hands. And this is a problem. United were leading this group, and they're throwing it away, Rob. and it's not accepted.
They have. Yeah, I think when you've had control of the group in a way that United did, in terms of winning those 3 games and looking comfortable, much more comfortable than anyone expected United to be when you thought about the group when the draw was made. It doesn't look good on Ole. Now, you use the word motivation now. I'm not going to use that word because I believe all footballers are generally motivated. It's about being able to expel what you work at all week long and being able to kind of take tactics, take responsibility, and going out on the football pitch and doing your job. Now, they would have known for the last day or 2 or 3 what they were doing in terms of Leipzig. They would have talked about these things. The tactics would have been in place. They've played 3-5-2 before. They've played different systems. It's not that these guys have never played this before. Aaron Wan-Bissaka has played as a right wing back and a right back, and he should know the difference. Now, it doesn't matter what Ole says to him. It's up to him to actually know what to do. The mark there is stop blaming Ole. Well, at the end of the day, these players represent him in the same way that he represents his players. So when he does his pressers and he wants to be stately like he is, and he wants to be Ole Gunnar Solskjaer from the Sir Alex Ferguson school, that's cool because that's who he is and that's great. But these players are who they are. And what we're seeing is that this team that Ole's built, it's good. It's got talent. They can play different systems. They've shown that they can. But this whole thing about starting games and reneging possession, not keeping the ball, not being smart, that's down to them. That's not motivation. That's just going and doing your job. And these players, for the first 20 minutes of games, are not doing their job. So that ultimately does come back to Ole, because Ole has to find a way to make them do it. So we're seeing United today, when you look at the way they set up, there's no criticism in terms of what they were trying to do. However, if Wan-Bissaka is playing too narrow, who should be telling him, well, Ole, yes, but Harry Maguire needs to turn to his fullback and say, get out there. Look where Angelino's starting. Get out there. I didn't see that today. And we saw lots of kind of shape issues within the shape. And you're kind of thinking, what is that? Why is that communication on the football pitch not really happening? And as I said before, I think Harry's come into the club and been a good stately kind of club captain, but in those situations, he has to take control. He has to be the manager on the pitch. And considering what we're seeing are defensive issues, you really do have to put it on your captain's shoulders. Like for today, I don't think Lindelof played that badly at all. But I think Maguire made 2 or 3 mistakes where I kind of think to myself, well, I need more from you. If you're representing Ole on that pitch at that moment of time, like you actually saw it with the third goal, right? Go away, everyone, and look at it again. When De Gea comes to close out, and obviously they meet and the ball goes past him and goes in the net, Maguire just kind of goes, and he wasn't going like that because of De Gea. He was thinking, I should have got across the post. And you saw it. He just kind of turned away in shame and just thought, and it's the small moments. I always say it, don't I, every week on the podcast. There's the small moments that change games, the tiny details. And that detail there was centre-back, get across the front post and clear the ball. Protect your goalkeeper. No ball should come across there. Certainly in the shape United were in. So all 3 goals for United tonight were potentially mistakes. They weren't great moments of magic from Leipzig. And yet United fought their way back into the game. 3-1, 3-2, back into it, final 10 minutes. Then obviously that getting so close with the near own goal. But let's be honest, they didn't deserve it. And I think Ole has to kind of stand up with these situations. And he's always fighting fire at Man United, no matter what he does. Yeah, he could be great and people will still be after him. But when you're not great, when you start losing games, rightfully, you will be questioned as a manager. And I always say when United go out to the Champions League or fail to get in the Champions League, generally that's when the axe falls on a manager at Old Trafford. And Ole is in a precarious situation now. Like he has to go on a run. You're out the Champions League. I'm not interested in Europa League. I'll be honest, as a fan, doesn't do anything for me. If United win
the thought of us having to sit here every Thursday and do the Masterclass live after we play LASK. I'm sorry, guys. We love.
Well, that's what we signed up for.
We were talking about it the other day. I said, Rob, We'll be doing it every Wednesday and Tuesday. Obviously, when
what did I say to you?
And you said to me, "Don't get to." We might be doing it on Thursday, and I laughed.
We might be doing it on Thursdays, and we are going to be doing it on Thursdays. And the thing is, with Manchester United, are they really a Champions League knockout side at the moment? No, they're not. You know, I always say this even in the Premier League. It's not really week by week by week. It's just about kind of making tiny steps so you can get near that top four and you can reinforce and get close to City and close to Liverpool. We are nowhere near those two clubs at the moment. So when fans get upset because United are not, you know, right on their tails or not challenging, I always think to myself, and I always say to them on Twitter and other scenarios at Old Trafford or whenever I speak to fans, we're not there yet. But that's not an excuse. You know, we have to get closer all the time. And, you know, if you could read out some more of the comments here for me, Haider, because they kind of flash up so quickly and I miss them when I'm chatting.
Yeah, that's right. I'll do that. So we got Jones E202. Hello, mate. Ollie's a Mr. Nice guy, probably more worried about addressing the media about Mino Raiola's comments. Rob, we're not going to talk about Pogba Raiola's comments today.
That won't matter now. You know, he won't he won't even get asked for that now because the story suddenly is not Raiola's gob. The story is Manchester United were poor and went out the Champions League.
Absolutely. NZZZ. Thursday, Sunday games now, Rob.
Wonderful.
Look, I saw a comment here. Helen, you got it here. Mm-hmm. No one will watch Europa, and they're better off playing a second string under 23s to give them a run. I won't be watching. I would definitely be putting the under 23s in the Europa League, Rob. I really think
that. I agree with that. You know, I also just said a minute ago, I think with Manchester United, this team and this squad is still not good enough to perform Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. They're not good enough. They don't have the depth. It's improved last summer, but the real depth isn't really there yet. And you can see that they struggle in the Champions League, or they do well in the Champions League and then struggle in the league. You know, they haven't got that cohesion yet, and that's something that takes time to build. But you run out of time. You know, this is the whole thing of Ole, and we talked about Poch every week. You know, he's now in a precarious situation because if you lose, say, the next league game or the next two league games or something like that, you can't say, well, we're still in Europe. You know, we're still in Europe. We're still doing okay. The Europa League does not float Manchester United's boat. Yeah, the board are not really interested in it. It doesn't bring in the big money. And this hurts Manchester United in terms of sponsorship. You know, when you're looking forward and you're trying to structure your team and your club commercially, if you're not in the Champions League or not in the knockouts, then there's a problem. And once that problem materializes, as it has tonight, then Ole has big questions to answer to the board, to Ed Woodward, when there is a guy ready to take his job who sat there waiting by the phone. And this is, you know, we can defend Ole, you know, I do. I defend him tactically and on this show in terms of the setup. But results are what keep you your job. Manchester United lost tonight. They deserve to lose.
The thing is, Rob, you know my views. I have doubts on Ole's long-term ability to take this team to the next step. I do think Pochettino would be a better fit. And I'm going to say that I do think that he would get more out of this squad. But today I'm not sitting here and saying this is all Ole's fault. Looking at the 3-5-2, I had no issues with that. I had no issue with Matic McTominay. I'm someone, as all the listeners know, and you know this, I want to see attacking football. But today was about pragmatism. Last week against PSG was about pragmatism. All we needed was a point from 2 games. We just had to keep it tight, be structured, and we didn't do that. I don't think there was anything wrong with the tactics today or yesterday. My biggest gripe with today is we went 2-0 down after 20 minutes. Change it. We wait till half-time to change it. I honestly think if Paul Pogba had come on after 20 minutes, we could have been sitting here with a 3-0. I honestly believe that because United couldn't get their foot on the ball. They were getting overrun in midfield. I mean, another problem that I saw, Rob, was that when you play the 3-5-2, Bruno's pressing, right? So what I saw was that he liked to press high. And what was happening is that it was Matic McTominay against almost 4 midfielders. And this was not something that the players picked up on either. The players should pick up on this. And it's this game management. This Man United squad and team, they've got a lot of talent, in my opinion, but they haven't got enough of this. There's not enough leadership. There's no one to stand up. And that's a problem in this week. Maguire's your captain. He's making consistent mistakes. Not so much the last few games, but in general, since he's come to Man United, that goal was terrible to give away. What hope do United have of building anything when you're making the same repetitive defensive mistakes? And that's why I want to talk about the defensive mistakes that we're making. You cannot keep on doing that. But what is that? Is that a coaching thing? Is that the players and their concentration? Because repetition always turns a habit, doesn't it? We've discussed this a lot of the times. That's with the good and with the bad. United make a lot of mistakes, and they seem to make the same mistakes every single week. And last week, we got away with it. The week before, we got away with it. This week, we didn't. And you do this against City, go in the 20 minutes like that, we could find ourselves 3-0 down. And that's the most frustrating thing.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the defence, and, I keep coming back to what was said at the start of the show, and that is personality. So does Manchester United back four, or today was kind of like a back seven at times when we started the game for some reason, too deep, looking like they'd never played the system in their lives. Does that back four in general have a personality that gives Man United fans confidence? No. You don't watch them and think, well, they know exactly what they're doing. So if they make a mistake, it's rare, etc. You move on like that. You look at kind of the tactics. This Manchester United team has weaknesses, and we know this. Harry Maguire is too slow. Victor Lindelof is too slow to be Harry Maguire's partner. So one of them has to be changed. And I do agree with lots of people who say to me every week, certainly last season when I was giving Lindelof a hard time, they were saying, well, why aren't you having to go at Maguire? And I'm like, well, it's borderline. I think Maguire's played better. He has offered leadership last season, and you can kind of take your stance and your reading from that. But tonight, I didn't have a problem at all with Lindelof. I had a problem with Maguire. And I think both of those two together at centre-back have been fine in the last few weeks, and we've both said that on this show. We've been happy with their contributions. But today was a kind of night where you needed to be rock solid. Rock solid. Those two centre-backs had to control that whole back five. So when they were dropping deep, there's a senior footballers in that line there of scrimmage. They've got to make sure that everyone is doing their jobs. It's difficult. Luke Shaw comes back in. He's been injured. We all know that Luke Shaw, when he comes back off an injury, takes 6 games to get back to being Luke Shaw. So I was worried about that today. I expected him to play, but I was thinking, well, he's coming in. His fitness is probably going to be a little bit off, and it's going to take him time to get back on. And you saw today, he made 2 or 3 bad errors. For the second goal, he's out of position. That allows the ball to go across. But the real issue, of course, was still on that left-hand side with Wan-Bissaka and Angelino. That was the key to the whole match in terms of going 2-0 down at that point early in the game. The defence is a problem, but you can't just go and buy someone every time we think the defence is a problem. You've got to work at it. So that comes down to the coach. So I don't think that every mistake that United have made in the last 2 years down to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the back, but this is now his team. And this is what I was saying last season, is that after a year or two, you can start to say that this is now becomes the team of the current manager and not the past one. This is not Jose Mourinho's team. Now, we are seeing similar errors at times, certainly in terms of concentration and maybe, holding your own for kind of 20-minute spell and looking fragile rather than just looking like a team on the front foot. And Manchester United can do it in spells of 15 and 20 minutes. But they can't do any more than that. That's a problem. So that's not Ole's fault, but it always comes back to the manager. The manager has to go and fix these things on the training ground. And the issues and the problems that we're talking about now are continuous, repetitive ones that we have been maybe seeing for maybe 6 months to 12
Rob, they're fundamental problems that are hindering our progress going forward.
They're hindering our ability to win games in situations where they shouldn't. That's what it is. So overall, United's results, as I've said before, over 12 months have been fine. I think, as I said in the last Masterclass, United in the Premier League had won more points up until that point than any other team, even Liverpool and City. But that's not what we're talking about. What we are talking about is a consistency approach from the players. And there is a problem there. So we need to kind of dig deep and find out what is the issue. And I just said it there. I think it's personality. I don't think these players come out and have that kind of unerring belief that they are the better team on that pitch. They have spells where they blow teams away and they look like peak Barcelona, 4 passes, cut someone in half and score a goal. And you think, wow. But then they have these like hour periods, 45 minutes, 30-minute spells of just looking dire, like they've never played before. And that's hard for Ole. I think at 20 minutes, he's thinking, do I change it? Do I change it? Do I change it? He opts not to. He makes the change at half time. That's not unreasonable. I would have changed it earlier. I'd have brought Pogba earlier on. But that is, if you do that, there is this kind of this admission to the opponent that you're panicking. Yeah, I'm changing it all quickly. I'm in a mess. But United never got their foot on the ball. It's up to those players out on the pitch to put their foot on the ball and pass it. These are the basic requirements of a footballer. Keep possession, play your position. And this is why I keep coming back to Wan-Bissaka on this. Because if Wan-Bissaka plays right wing back correctly tonight, Man United are probably goalless at half-time. Yeah? And United go through tonight, probably. Now, circumstances always dictate other circumstances, but it was that key there at right back that destroyed us. Angelino is not a very good player. He's okay. He's a decent.
But you know what he's going to do, Rob. You know a lot. They were playing the diagonal ball. You know that Sabitzer's going to play it across diagonally to Angelino. He's going to be playing almost as a left winger. Obviously, they go to a back three when they're attacking. You knew exactly what they're going to do. We did it fantastically in the first game where we managed to stop them doing that. But same repetitive problem and same issue, and we didn't address it.
Yeah, and this is why I was glad to see Brandon come on. And I actually think Brandon, he made 2 or 3 errors in the game, but he actually played the position. Like when he came on and played wing back, United went back to a 4. He was playing more of a wing back then, and he was playing at fullback. So that was weird because it's like in a 5, he would have been perfect for that. So Ole could have changed that, or Ole could have, from the start, realised that Wan-Bissaka wasn't the player to play that. And I think that's what we can see is that in a 5 or in a 3, then the temptation, I think, is to drop Wan-Bissaka out. He can't play inside as one of the 3, and then he doesn't play on the outside as a wing back. He's too scared. He doesn't have the personality. He comes too narrow. He doesn't know what to do in the channel. He leaves the wing so much space there for Angelino to exploit, and they scored 2 goals from it. It comes from that mistake, from what he's doing in his head there in his position. I'm not trying to pick individuals out because I think overall they weren't very good. All of them, all 11 of them from the start. And it did get better in the last 10 or 15 minutes with the substitutes. However, it is a personality issue. And I think it will continue to be one. This is what the Glazers and Woodward would have to think about now, about what they believe the team is doing, whether it's developing or whether they think there's a transfer window coming up. Do they make a change? That's a big call. You know, they've spoken publicly about supporting Ole, but you know, when you lose like that, or you get knocked out of Champions League losing 3 games, because that's the final record now, and you had control, it really doesn't look good on the manager. Whoever you are, it just doesn't look good.
That's the thing for me, Rob, is that obviously a lot of people are saying group of death, United were sitting at the top. We weren't expected. A lot of fans didn't expect us to go through. And I get that viewpoint.
There's no such thing as a group of death. No such thing as a group of death.
Okay.
You know, if you've got 9 points, you got 9 points. You're in control. Go through the group. You're in control.
Okay, fine. You're in control. From that position, Rob, 3 defeats, or especially the last time when you needed a point, it's sackable, Rob. It's a sackable. I'm not saying go and sack him tomorrow, but it is sackable because at the end of the day, you had it in your hands. I'm not saying go and sack him tomorrow, but I'm saying that it's very fair that if a club had just done what United had done, they sack their manager. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but it'd be reasonable to think that that's what a team or a club would do.
It's sackable in the sense that if you've got Pochettino without a job waiting for a job, then you're in trouble. If you've got no one waiting for a job, and if you've committed to maybe losing, but keeping it going, keep building, keep taking the baby steps going forward, then fine. But Manchester United are in a kind of halfway house. You know, they got in the top 4 last year, and many people could say that certainly after the way the season started, that was an achievement, and certainly getting the consistency of the results and getting themselves into 3rd was a fine achievement from that stage. But then you're looking for the next steps. Now, the transfer window wasn't spectacular, but it made the squad stronger. Tonight, United could have really done with Cavani. They could have done with Martial. You know, when they're looking for goals, they're looking for movement. They're looking
hold up play as well, Rob. That's a massive thing.
Just joining the dots. You know, we talk about joining the dots all the time. And, you know, Rashford's playing with quite a bad injury. You know, it's people saying it's a knock, but I think whenever you have a shoulder injury like that, it's tough. And you can see again, Rashford didn't have the afterburners on today. Really difficult to play him. He's having to play as number 9 tonight and try again, join the dots from Greenwood, who's playing a long way from him on the right. That's then up to Ole to kind of find a way as a coach, whether that is to try something completely radical at that point and really overload areas so you can kind of get advantages, or you just switch. Now, what did he do? He went to 4-2-3-1. And as I say, every week when things go
preferred
when things go wrong for Manchester United, he goes back to 4-2-3-1 because the players know it better than anything else. There is a logic tonight to say that as soon as it went wrong at 5-3-2, and as soon as that really, after you were 2-0 down in 12 minutes, he probably should have gone straight away to 4-2-3-1. Straight away. Ripped it up and said, right, let's go back to basics. I want to keep the ball, get it on the deck, and do the normal stuff. Because Man United were not doing the normal stuff. And I think for me, as a fan and as a journalist that reports on Manchester United and looks at these things analytically, the real issue is United doing the basics of putting the ball on the deck, playing it 5 yards, moving into space. Far too many of them can't do it. Is that a problem with the squad? Is that a problem with coaching? You can crunch numbers until you're blue in the face. United had, I think, more possession by the end of the game than Leipzig did. But Leipzig did what they had to do on the night, and that was win the game. But United just needed a draw. And again, he set up for that. I've got no problems with setting up with a low block. Absolutely no issue. People always say, oh, you didn't like Mourinho.
I don't have an issue with that as well.
No issue with a low block. I think when you play a low block, you've got to play it. There's right terms to play it and then play on the counter-attack. But United never looked like playing effectively on the counter today, did they? Every time the ball got forward, everyone was in weird kind of positions. They were kind of trotting out into the wrong space. You didn't have fullbacks going forward. So it's interesting when you saw Telles really pushing on. And then you had Wan-Bissaka just kind of sitting in a no man's land between right wing back and the centre back. And you're kind of thinking, push on, make the space up that way.
He doesn't understand the role, Rob.
He does understand the role. He's not an idiot, right? He's an England international.
He's not executing it.
Yeah, he's an international footballer that costs us 50 million quid, right? He's a kid, but he knows the difference between wing back and fullback. He wasn't playing as a fullback today. He had to go and do the job of a wing back. So as far as I look at that, that's a personality issue. That's not just intelligence. He's not thick. He knows he would have been prepped. He would have got his pre-match book of what to do, what to look out for, like they do when they prep these for the team, when they all get their roles and say, right, who you're looking after. He knows what Angelino does. He knows Angelino's going to go wide. He knows Angelino's going to come in like that. And like you said, Haider, this as a presenter of the Masterclass, that ball is coming from right to left in the switch because that's what they do. He knows that, unless he doesn't watch football or doesn't listen to his coach. So it's one of those two things. I think it's a personality issue. And we can move on. We're not just going to look at Wan-Bissaka because, we've done that now for half an hour and talked about
we won't do that. I'm going to read out a few of the comments, Rob.
Yeah, of course. If we can, let's see what everyone is saying because I'm really interested to see what people who are watching the show are actually thinking.
So, Joseph, I'm pretty sure you were in the last one. We did speak quite extensively about the most points since January and Rob's. Rob,
it does mean something. Yeah, it does mean something in the Premier League. Of course it does. And I was just looking at the Champions League table just before we went on air here. Manchester United had 9 points at the end of the group, which is not too far from the magic 10, like we always talk about in the Champions League. And they had the highest goal difference. The highest goal difference in the group, and they got eliminated. That makes it worse. That makes it worse for me. I'm kind of thinking you are doing some things really well, but then you're doing other parts of the game so badly that you're losing and getting eliminated from the Champions League. It doesn't bring me any solace that last 10 minutes where United were chasing the game. When Pogba gets that goal, obviously I think it did go off Maguire, so probably it was his goal. But when we make it 3-2, I didn't have that usual kick that, here we go. We're going to go mad for the last 5 minutes. I just thought it's pathetic that we've got to this. It really is. We should just play better in the real normal moments of the game. I'm not saying the magic moments. Just when you want to get the ball on the deck and play the real boring stuff. Be pragmatic. Play 5-yard balls. Go from Maguire to Lindelof to De Gea to Lindelof to Wan-Bissaka to De Gea. Keep the ball. Be boring.
Rob. Lack of game management, lack of personality.
But game management from the players. That's the players.
I'm not saying from the manager. I'm saying from
the
players. Yeah, they're out there. If they can't keep the ball and can't pass it 5 yards, that's on them.
They live in this world where they feel they have to blow teams away. If we go there and we're in a bad situation, we'll just blow you away. And, Manchester United of old used to do that as well. But they also used to do all the technical stuff. They would see a game out. If they were ahead with 20 minutes to go, it would be boring at Old Trafford. I would watch it and the back four would play it along the back to the goalkeeper, back in. And that's how you win games.
That's how you win titles, Rob.
You squeeze games out. That's how you win games. At the end of the match, it doesn't have to be a boring game. We're not saying go and be Mourinho low block every week. We're saying keep possession. This Manchester United team cannot keep possession. And that then does ultimately land at the door of the manager because he has to train them to keep possession or move out players that are not doing it and buy players that can do it. And that will really be the next part for Ole, because if he does keep his job and if he's lucky enough to, and United pass on Pochettino, he needs to technically make the starting 11 better than what it is. We can't live off beating teams in 15-minute spells. It catches up with you eventually. And this is why today when I was tweeting about it and people were asking me, so why are you negative? Why are you so negative, Rob? You're always negative. I'm like, well, I'm not negative. It's just that when you see it repeated over and over again, and maybe you've beaten a team that you could have lost to, and we could have lost the last few games, let's be honest. But when it repeats, then you kind of think you're going to hit a wall eventually.
Rob, that was my point. I was saying how it's unsustainable.
Yeah.
You can't go and play for 15 minutes. Like I said last week, blow teams away, and then it's papering over the cracks. There's talent here. We've shown that we can do it after the restart, but right now, we're not even, as we said, Jekyll and Hyde, right? We're not even consistent within a game. It could be 20 minutes here and then 70 minutes of put, and that's not good enough, really. I'm going to read out a few more of the comments, Rob, here.
Yeah, read them all out.
Kyra McQueen, we had enough set plays to win 3 games today. Why do we never score from set plays but always concede? It's a bit of a problem. We've got Maguire, we've got people in the box of who are a big stature, but I think the quality of the ball's not good enough. We haven't seen anything from Pele since the game against PSG. Obviously, he came off. Well, we can talk about that in a bit. But yeah, what have you got to add to that?
2 reasons with set pieces with Manchester United. I said before that some teams, who are more pragmatic, who are a little bit more kind of industrial, they will go and practice set pieces till they're blue in the face. To Manchester United, it probably isn't something that they practice overall. They might practice it 10% out of the whole 100% of a day, day to day to day. What we see in these situations is you expect a better first ball from whoever is delivering it. Luke Shaw on the left, Tellers comes in. He's a set piece specialist. I can't remember one decent set piece from him yet since he started at the club. Bruno Fernandes is a set piece specialist, came from his club, came from Sporting, and was fantastic in terms of his assists from set pieces. There is something not right there. The chemistry is all wrong. We've got Harry Maguire, who was one of the best goal-scoring defenders at Leicester before he came to Man United, can't score goals from set pieces. So you can either, again, look at the manager, or you can say it's just players not doing their jobs. There will be practice in these things. But again, I think that's personality. I think there has to be that desire. And I'm going to say his name again. When Paul Pogba gets his head on that ball, he doesn't get it because he's the biggest player there. It's just desire. Because he's running, he's making that leap, and he's going to get his head on the ball. I don't see that enough from Man United. I don't see that. It's not motivation. There's a difference. It's just slight difference in terms of what do you want your players to do at that time. They don't have a plan. It just seems to be that they try and swing the ball in onto a post, either near or far, and they try and get their head on it. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. But this Man United team doesn't, because it doesn't have a picture of what it wants to achieve. Again, that's up to Ole to solve, not up to players just to say, well, why are you not doing it? You have to come up with something smarter. You have to come up with set plays. You have to say to Bruno Fernandes, I want that ball on the penalty spot every time. You've got to get past the first man on the first post. If you're there on the near post, that ball has not, if it hits that first post in the near post, you're in trouble. That's not going to give us anything. So players have to improve, but we also see it in set plays on the opposite end, don't we? Where we fail. So teams score against us because we're not organised. That comes down to Ole.
Yeah, I agree. Green Devil's got a good point here. Central midfielders that can dictate games are Mata, Pogba, Van der Beek, Fred, Matchett, Scott are battering rams. They won't dictate a game or retain possession. We'll struggle with them, and we are. I mean, that is. He's not wrong, is he? There, Rob. To be honest with you, we've said this already earlier on. United can't control games. They can't keep possession. These are basics. What do you expect? Rob, even with Pogba in the side, we don't dictate the play.
No,
so that is on the manager, because Pogba is a player that can dictate play. He's wonderful on the ball.
It is, but like we said, no one had an issue really with 3-5-2 today. What we had an issue with was the 3 becoming a 5 almost from minute 1. Now, I don't believe for 1 second that's how they set up. I don't believe for a second Ole said play 5 across the back and just sit there, lads. I don't believe that, because that's not really what the shape, that's not what the tactics tell you either. When you actually look at what they're trying to do, maybe within play to play, you can see that United were trying to play a kind of 3-5-2, or try and sit a little bit lower in a lower block and then hit on the counter attack. And they never achieved any of those things. And it wasn't a tactical problem. The problem was the players. So those players, like I'm saying there, if Harry Maguire was in the middle of the pitch with effectively 5 players across, he has got to tell those fullbacks to get on, scream at them, get them out. Wan-Bissaka, 40 yards forward, mate. Don't sit back here and cover the channel. There's nothing going on there. Don't get too tight to your centre-backs. These are issues that we are seeing like repeatedly, but I think it's personality. I don't think that's Ole. I think, again, people say they want Ole to be in the technical area, shouting and screaming and maybe giving a little bit more in terms of coaching and advice. But there's plenty of coaches that don't do that. Van Gaal used to talk about this a lot and say, look, I set this team up. They know what I expect. I'm not going to stand in the technical area and scream at people because we've done all the work. The work comes on the training ground. And I totally agree with that. I do like to see passion from managers, and I think Ole does give it in fits and starts. But you saw today he needed to react a little bit more because he's trying to stay calm, keep his team calm. But what we need is the team to kind of move through the gears. And Manchester United have this problem. They just get stuck in second or third gear. And then they have 10 minutes of fourth gear, 5 minutes of fifth gear. Then they find this magical sixth gear that we didn't even know they had. Then they can sometimes win games. But in the Champions League, you always get found out in Europe because better teams who are technical will play round you. They will keep the ball long for longer spells. Leipzig, I was surprised, gave us a way back into the game at 3-0. They lacked a bit of personality. They've got a young coach in Nagelsmann and a team today with lots of changes. They haven't got Werner in their team anymore. There was no Upamecano today.
They didn't have a striker, Rob, in the first half.
They didn't have a striker. They played that deliberately. That was a system he plays all the time in the Bundesliga.
Yeah.
So he drops his striker out and they play literally with a kind of defence and midfield and they look after the ball and they're clever with it. Manchester United lack that ability to be clever with the ball at their feet. But that's the bit that gets me. I want players to play 5-yard balls sometimes. Just do the simple stuff. They don't do that. And that's up to Ole to solve that if his players have got a game plan and they're not executing.
Yeah, well said. Guys, some really great comments. We're going to move on to... We'll have to talk about Telles and Shaw, Rob. We've touched on, obviously, the fullbacks, but that was a bit of a disaster as well today. We saw Telles in his preferred position. A lot of fans, including myself, want to see 3 at the back. I mean, there's a comment here. Ranjan saying players not drilled to handle it. You've got to play a formation which they play day in, day out, 4-2-3-1 in crucial games. At least we needed a draw on defense is shambolic. I don't think they're not drilled, Rob, in the 3-5-2. They can play the 3-5-2. We've seen that. They can play the 4-2-3-1. They can also play a diamond, maybe not as effectively. And that's not a problem for me. I don't mind to see tactical flexibility. That's a good thing because you need a plan B. But the problem is plan A is not working particularly well. And looking at that 3 at the back, I thought, right, it looked like going to work today. You're right, Shaw took some time, but the defending, Rob, at the back post for that second goal was just shocking. And I'm not going to go in on Telles. I'm not going to go in on Shaw. He's just come back. But the positional play of our back 3/back 5 is a serious, serious problem. You can't go forward without fixing these issues. Now, when I look at Shaw and Telles, they both have deficiencies to their game. Telles defending in a flat back 4 problem. Shaw going forward isn't good enough. United have players who aren't well rounded. Now, how are you meant to get to the next level when a player's good at one thing but not good in another? What can the manager do to fix that?
Buy better players. I say it every week. If you have positional issues and you see that they're repetitive, you can either take that player and train them throughout the season and improve them and get to a point where you are happy with what they do in terms of contribution, or you flag it as a position that needs to be solved and you need to go and buy someone to solve it. And I think this is the problem. Like when you look at today, is the chemistry right between Shaw and Telles in terms of communication? Well, they've played together once, which I think was a PSG game. Yeah, so that's a while back now. But there is this, I think, problem at every football club is that when you have players playing different roles than what they're used to, players see things with a picture in their mind. So I think this is why Wan-Bissaka gets caught out of position. Yeah, so he sees it as a right back, but the game tonight required him to be a right wing back. Telles sees the game as a progressive left wing back, but is being asked to kind of come inside a little bit at times and be a left back. Now, fans, again, I don't know if they appreciate it or not, but these little kind of role kind of tweaks, you don't practice them that much in training. You go through them and you work on the tactics, but you can never get it to the point where it's all muscle memory. It becomes an issue. And then you make mistakes and then you concede goals. So that's what we saw tonight. Like we just said there, United playing 5 across the back. or playing a 3 at the back. These are not systems that United are au fait with all the time. They have played them, but they're not systems that they switch to in the flick of a hat in Premier League games or something that we see consistently. And the lack of that means that you run out of systems. So when you're trying to change something, it's hard. So what does Ole do? He goes back to 4-2-3-1 because he understands that his team understand that. They've done all the tactical work on that. So you go back to it. And one of the comments there that said earlier on, is there a logic that he should have started with 4-2-3-1? Well, if you're worried that maybe Wan-Bissaka can't handle the right-hand side and maybe worried that Luke Shaw is playing in a channel where he maybe isn't completely fit and that Telles is having to do work that he's not happy with, then as a manager, you have to bite the bullet and change the system. You have to say, I want to play 3-5-2, but I'm not convinced it's going to work. Ole was obviously convinced that it would work. Otherwise, he wouldn't do it. Managers don't put their jobs on the line just because, in terms of risk. There is risk and reward. If United had got it right, if they'd defended those first 2 goals, which they should have done, then at half-time, we're in a good position. It's 0-0. Maybe we go into the second half. But players have to do their jobs. But it is difficult for players to assimilate into new roles when they don't feel that that's their natural role. And I certainly would say that with those 3 players who are defenders, they're not their natural roles in those systems because they're not used to playing it and they don't really know each other. Tellers doesn't know the guys on his inside yet. He's played a few games with them.
Rob, this is a really big point I do want to pull up as well, is that we've got Tellers played a handful of games, 6 or 7 games.
Hardly anything.
From back 3 to back. It's nothing. Even Cavani, these players have just come in. They're going to take time to bed in. But the biggest problem is, Rob, to play devil's advocate, is that what system are they coming into? There's no familiarity. As Lukesh says here, one formation and one system, something that doesn't alienate players from doing their roles. If you're a new player, you're coming from a different league. The Portuguese league, obviously Bruno Fernandes has made absolute mincemeat at the Premier League, but you've got Telles coming from the Portuguese league as a defender. It's much, much slower. And you ask him to come in. If it's not a settled side, if the players don't necessarily play the same formation every week, they don't know their roles to a T, or they're not executing. So maybe the planning's there, but the execution isn't correct, Rob. It's difficult for a player to come in, isn't it? And to try and assimilate. And what happens, and this is my biggest problem, right, with Man United over the last 7 years, is that we've signed some talented players, but they've come into this club and the culture, maybe not the culture, but the environment is not there, or is not, sort of breeding success. So the players come in and then they fall into that poor culture or that poor performance. You look at Harry Maguire, isn't a bad player, but he's regressed. You see players come in and they look worse. They look like rabbit in headlights. And this is a problem at Man United. So you can say we can buy better players, Rob, but it seems that better players come in, they get worse, and then they go, for example, someone like Lukaku, even Sanchez, they go and leave and they go to a different league and they look like good players again. Chris Smalling looks like a good player. So
yeah, I think there's a conflict here. Yeah, there's a conflict between culture and then also philosophy. These are 2 things in football. So Manchester United have a very distinct culture, and I think they lost that with Van Gaal and Mourinho. So the culture of the football club was eroded really by the setup from the Glazers downwards into the boot room and finding a way to get players that kind of reinforce what you believe Manchester United is. Now, I think Ole has reset that and done well in terms of bringing back the culture. And there's certainly this feeling with United that, they're never beaten. So even today, played terrible, but they're never beaten. They go into the last minute. And that was something we lost under Mourinho. We looked beaten with 10 minutes to go in some games and they would be fast asleep, ready for their beds. And you could see it. And you'd be like, that's not Man United. But philosophy is something completely different. And not every coach has philosophy in terms of their kind of backroom. So we can talk about, again, we have in this program Pep and Klopp and managers that play with a philosophy. Yeah. But this will ultimately be where Ole succeeds or fails. He'll either find a philosophy where he can get his team playing a certain way and that they show consistency in their displays through the philosophy of his coaching, or it won't come and he'll get sacked. And then you go to someone like Pochettino, who does play with a bit more of a philosophy. He does play with systems that his players are comfortable with. He very rarely would play at Tottenham something that was incredibly left field. You wouldn't see him try different things in that way. And he would also like to try and keep a starting 11 that did the same things over and over again. He very rarely went to his bench to have huge changes. It wasn't a very deep squad at Tottenham. They had good players on the bench, but it wasn't a deep squad. United have got a deeper squad now, but we're not really seeing that being beneficial to the philosophy, are we? We're not seeing that United are playing better football than, say, they were 12 months ago. And this is the issue and the confusion. So I think that's where Ole will get judged on, because the Glazers will have to believe that he is installing something that is sustainable and constantly improving. And I think if you get knocked out of the Champions League when you were 9 points ahead and you were the team in control of the group, and you go to PSG and you take them apart, and then Leipzig come to Old Trafford and you're on a bit of a bad run at home and you smash 5 against them, at that point, you have to qualify. You have no choice, but you must qualify from that point. And I think part of that is the philosophy, is that United are not going into these games playing with a set way or playing, with the system within the philosophy, and then they're getting caught out because the personality isn't there to kind of drive them forward. That's both personality from Ole and that's personality from the players. It's a collective.
Rob, and that's where when people ask me why I have doubts about Ole is, for example, you see a lot of comparisons with Jurgen Klopp, right? Jurgen Klopp had a really terrible first 2 years at Liverpool. And what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done, and I don't think he's given enough credit for what he's done, is that you actually look at his record and he stabilized the club. That's fantastic. But people always bring back to Klopp's record. But for me, statistically, Ole has had a better first 100 games. But what you saw with Klopp still is that even from a very early stage, there was that philosophy. And me, as a fan, this is how I think. Not everyone thinks like that. A lot of people love Jose Mourinho. They don't care. They just want to win. And that's fine. That's how you view football. For the way I view football, I want to look at my team and know how they're going to play week in, week out. I want to know exactly how they're going to set up. I want to know exactly what the manager's philosophy is. And I don't see that right now. So for me, that's an issue. I could sit behind Ole and be like, right, I back you. And from January, I was like, right, I back you. And then he had a fantastic end to the season, got us into the top 4. Fantastic. Wasn't back the way I think he deserved to be. But still, it's a good squad. I don't think the squad's weaker than it was last season. No, but we're 2 years down the line. It's not. We're 2 years down the line. There's more depth. And I'm not seeing this philosophy. So for me, that's a problem. Now, for other fans, they like what we see. They like the flexibility. They can see this incremental improvement. That's fine. But for me, 2 years down the line, you should be able to say exactly how Man United are going to play. Now, you can say in parts how they're going to play, but we're no better. We're still a counter-attacking side. We can't keep the ball. And that's what we're trying to do, but with the players that we can't do it with. So, look, there's a lot of other problems from above. But the question, Ahsoka's asking me here, would I sack Ole now? Honestly.
You would. I know you would.
Honestly, it's not the right time, Rob.
Yeah.
It's. I'm with you, right? We were leading that group. We should be qualifying. There's no excuses. But I wouldn't go second before City. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Do I want Pochettino? Yes. But I can sit here and say what Ole's done well and what he hasn't done well. But for me, 2 years down the line, Rob, and the amount of money, 300 million you spent, you need to have an identity. You need to have a philosophy. And you mentioned this a few weeks ago. When it comes to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, you said he's never going to have a philosophy. He's not that sort of manager. But he can tweak it. He can change it. And he can. In big games, he can win the games. For me, I want to be entertained every single week, not sitting there and thinking, right, 70 minutes playing terribly, we blow teams away. I don't get excited by that. But that's how I view football. And that doesn't mean I'm right. And the listeners can disagree with that. You can disagree with that. But that's how I want Manchester United to play.
I don't disagree with that. Look, I've said this. I've written columns and columns about this. Manchester United have a certain philosophy as a football club and a culture, and we should adhere to that. There's no doubt about that. I'm not against that at all. What my maybe varying position is that football doesn't have to be entertaining every week. Yeah, that's not how I look at it, because I've been going to Old Trafford my whole life, and it's absolute revisionism to say that Fergie's teams weren't entertaining every week. They weren't. I've been to games where we've won 3 or 4-0 and it was boring. And you walk out of Old Trafford going, did I need to turn up today? It does happen, but you're winning. Exactly. And that is the difference. The difference is that when you play badly, you go and win. That is how you get a philosophy working for you and pumping away. So that's my view on it. And I said this with Mourinho. When Mourinho got the job, I 100% backed him. He was the manager I wanted. I said, he came to the club. His first press conference, he said to us all, he said, I'm going to adhere to the principles of Manchester United. I know what the club expects. I know what the fans expect. I'm going to do that. And in year one, it was quite exciting. It was a bit ragged at times, but United go and win the Europa League. They go and win the League Cup. I think they also took the Community Shield that year. And that's a successful season for year one. Year two, they get to second in the league, but it becomes a lot more pragmatic. And you see towards the end of the season that a lot of the desire and magic had kind of ebbed away. And, they'd brought in, Lukaku was coming into the football club, and the way that United was shaping didn't look right. And games were getting slower and more boring and dull, and results were starting to suffer, but not go catastrophic. Year three, it all falls apart. So my idea is that we need to avoid that. We need to avoid that scenario of thinking that just a top-line manager is the answer. And I think with what Ole's done in that kind of first year or 18 months, I'm good with. I think coming third from where they were was a good finish to the season.
I agree.
And then you have to build on it this year. Now, United are a few points off the top. They've kind of recovered after another bad start. The Premier League isn't a huge issue to me. I look at that and think, some of the performances are a bit off, and United are doing this, blowing away teams but not turning up. But it means that if you're getting results, you can build and work. You can go back to the training ground and work. The Champions League is not so forgiving. Yeah, if you want to get to the knockouts and you win your first 3 games, you've got to get to the knockouts. It's not acceptable to get knocked out. So you have to really catastrophically collapse when you only needed 1 point in the last 3 of those games. They go to Turkey. They were awful. They play PSG at Old Trafford, and lots of people said, it's a great game, because what you're saying there was that they entertained. They did entertain that day, but they were rubbish.
No, but I wasn't happy with that.
But all the replies I got were, no, but United played with a philosophy and an identity, and they went for it. And it's like, no, they gave up way too much. That was when I wanted Mourinho. That's when I wanted a low block. That's when I wanted him to say, close the game down
for three games.
And then you leave it with the final game at Leipzig against a Leipzig team who are really good at shredding teams. Yeah. And if you're not good defensively, or you lack place in your defense, they're great at hurting you. And that's why I was worried today. No, I wasn't worried just because United can make a mess of these things. I was worried because the matchup wasn't great. And I think United left themselves in a bad position. And again, managers live and die by these decisions. It's not really a big tactical issue. We're not talking here about philosophy on these ones. We're talking about character. We're talking about players just going out there, putting in a shift, and maybe keeping it boring and simple, but getting the result and knowing how to do that. This Man United team seems to have identity crises within games, and that's quite rare. Sometimes you might see a team, go into a game and play badly because their identity is not really formed. But United seem to have an hour of just looking like strangers and then half an hour of looking like the best team in the world. And you go, what is this? What am I actually watching? It's strange. Today, United going for it in 6th gear with 10 minutes to go. It wasn't even then good enough, was it? It was too late, and it was a mess, and it felt like United were reaching. And I think eventually, when you do that enough times, you literally run out of luck, and you get knocked out of things. The Premier League is a little bit more forgiving. If you keep going, you can get results. You can play worse teams and kind of get away with it and get wins. But Ole won't have that comfort now. Most managers at Manchester United get judged on Champions League performances or Champions League qualification. Last year, Ole got a big pat on his back for coming third and deserved it. He got a few extra new players. He deserved them. And as you said, it wasn't the greatest window ever, but it did strengthen the squad. However, here we are now. We're coming up to Christmas and we're out of the Champions League and back in Europa. We've regressed 12 months in Europe. There's no doubt, especially with the finances being as they are and the revenues dropping at Manchester United because of COVID, that will matter about whether they keep Ole in the job or not.
I think that's fair. I'm going to read out a few comments, Rob, before we wind down. Ranlax asking me what was Sir Alex Ferguson's philosophy. I mean, look, Sir Alex Ferguson won. And like I said, if Ole's winning playing this way, fine.
I can answer that question.
Fine. You can answer that as well. Well, obviously, he did play attacking football, but he wasn't always attacking. It's that nostalgia, Rob, isn't it? That it's those rose-tinted glasses. From after Ronaldo left to about our last title, apart from the last season, which was good fun, United were boring. They were poor in midfield, but he was an absolute genius.
In the days when 4-4-2 was king, Yeah, my old hashtag used to be at the end of it when Fergie left. I used to hashtag 442 is dead. 442 is dead. Yeah. But Fergie's philosophy was about how can you manipulate 442 to win every game. So some games was overloading on the wings. Some games was playing through the middle. When you had Cole and York, you could play with your two strikers and they would link up beautifully with the rest of the team and with each other and win games like that. And there were other times when you could have Carrick and Scholes in the centre, and it was about partnerships. So Fergie's philosophy was about partnerships. 442 lends it to be partnerships through the team. 2 centre-backs, 2 full-backs, 2 central midfielders, 2 wingers, 2 forwards. It's a simple philosophy, but in those days it worked. No one plays it anymore. Everyone plays variations of 4-3-3. It's a tougher system to get more out of, which is why I always say that Guardiola is a genius. Why I always say Klopp is a genius. I don't like it that they're at clubs that are direct rivals to us, but I respect it because their philosophies are based around 4-3-3, and 4-3-3 is the dominant side of the game now.
Which is what Ollie wants to play.
Yeah, Fergie might struggle today. If Fergie came back tomorrow and so we could reboot him and go back 20 years, he might struggle to play football in a generation of 4-3-3 when his generation was 4-4-2. And he was great at it in the sense that when he needed to modify it, he played 4-4-1-1. When he needed to get more out of Rooney didn't play as a centre forward. Rooney dropped into the hole and played in the pocket. So these were things that were like huge technical variations for Man United and for United fans, but still within the structure and philosophy of 4-4-2. We don't have that now. You know, United play a 4-2-3-1, and that's not Ole's philosophy. That's just a system that Ole thinks his players can play the most because that's what they've practiced.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to read out a few more, Rob, before we
let's have
down.
the comments. Let's see as many as we can go.
Yeah, so the Green Devil, Ollie has done great culturally, but tactically, no. Ollie took over a way better team than Klopp did at Liverpool. Ollie could be an assistant or direct full. I think he did. But he, as a manager, he's done as much as he can do.
No, you don't want to be an assistant or director of football. If you can't do the manager's job, go. Get rid. You know, let's not. There's nothing here about you're a legend. I hate all that stuff. I'm not into it at all. You know, it's like when people
Rob.
It's when people like bow down to like Roy Keane and other people like that. Now, I don't do it because I'm not interested in it. Yeah, great player for us. Other players have been great. Ole was fantastic for us. If you can't do the job of being manager, you don't get a pass to director of football. You don't get a pass to be the assistant. We'll keep you on at the club. You go, you get sacked, and you start again. And this is always the thing that I said was a risk, that if you go with Pochettino next, you are saying, scrap the last 2 years, we start again. And there'll be plenty of players that will come and go again. United have to spend money, but whatever systems we play now won't matter because Pochettino will change all of those things.
But also,
you don't then keep Ole at the club to oversee him. That would be crazy.
That's the thing as well. But if you're going to sign a director of football, someone who's got experience to be a director of football. I don't understand this square pegs and round holes. We say it about players on the pitch. Don't play him there. Yeah. Don't put someone who's never been a director of football as director of football.
But I see this all the time. People are saying to me, get Van der Sar. They say, get Van der Sar.
CEO, yeah.
He's never been a director of football. He's been a director of football as many times as I have. You know, this is the problem. You need specialists in all your roles. You need a director of football that knows how to create not just culture and philosophy, but can build the squad through recruitment. And I think United's recruitment in the last 2 years has been better. Not perfect, but much, much better than it has been. But that's a lesson that the Glazers and Ed Woodward have learned over 7 years. It's taken them a long time to learn a very simple lesson. And they still say to this day that they are not going to recruit a director of football. They've said it out loud. It's a real thing. They believe that Ed Woodward can control the club as a kind of mock director of football from his role in the boardroom. But of course, we know that's not the case. And United will suffer because of that. Any manager that comes in, if that's their kind of version of a director of football in terms of philosophy, then it's not a good starting point to be in. And it's trouble before you even get into it.
Yeah, and I will give Ollie credit. The signings that he's made the last 2 years have been our best ones. So he deserves credit for that. We've got, let me have a look. We've got a comment here from Ahsoka saying to me, was Poch really that attacking at Tottenham? Rob, we've had a discussion about this so many times. I remember him struggling so much away to the big teams and being a lot more pragmatic post-2017. I mentioned it in a previous podcast that Pochettino plays 4-2-3-1.
He's balanced. He's a balanced
Yeah.
coach. He doesn't really play overt attacking football. You're not going to see a kind of repetition of Salah, Mane, and Firmino going forward, or City playing with De Bruyne, playing Sterling through and Mahrez and Aguero. You're not going to see that. Pochettino comes, and this is the other thing I keep saying to fans is that they see Poch as this idealism in terms of a coach coming in. He would actually play very similar systems to Ole, but the question is, will he play them better? And that's the philosophical side of the job as a coach. Will he make it mesh better? Will he win more games? And will he put Man United in a place where they can challenge in that top 2 or 3?
What I will add is, myself personally, Rob, we said it many times on this podcast. We said it last week against West Ham. Our press is disjointed. We're halfway. Do we press? Do we not? We don't know.
It's half-baked.
Yeah, and this is a big problem. At least if Pochettino did come in, or someone like a Nagelsmann, you know that United are going to be the hardest working team in the league, because that's what they were.
I would be delighted.
I want to see us press.
I like Pochettino. I've said this to you many times, but I really like Nagelsmann. So I think when you look at progression and systems and what does Manchester United want to be, you would probably say Nagelsmann is a better fit than Pochettino. However, there's no doubt that Pochettino is the big name. Pochettino is the guy who's done it in the Premier League, got to a Champions League final. Nagelsmann did take a very young team to the semi-finals last year, but semi-finals don't really count. Even get to a final doesn't really count. But I look at Pochettino, if he is available, Manchester United are looking at him. There's no doubt about it. They've been looking at him for a very long time. And I do also think that Ole's contract will have something Champions League specific in it. So, for instance, David Moyes was sacked the minute he was out of the Champions League. He was gone. When we saw that Van Gaal didn't get the qualification that he needed, he won the FA Cup, he got sacked. You look at Mourinho, when it felt like it was all falling away and United were falling down the table and they only really had the Europa League left and, could they get in the Champions League that way? He was gone in November. So I would not be surprised if his contract reflects that, Ole. And that's why I said he could be in trouble now. He really could be. I'm not saying that United are just going to pull the trigger, but it will depend on how they view Pochettino. Is he a quick fix? Is he going to come in and get results quicker than Ole? Or do you stick with Ole, try and rebuild now through a Premier League campaign? I think it will actually help United being out of the Champions League and the Premier League. I think we'll see better performances. We'll see better results because there will be less pressure to perform in the Europa League than there is in the Champions League.
What I will say as well, Rob, is that we'll see if they back him. Because at the end of the day, if they don't back him, like they pulled the plug on Van Gaal's, because everyone knew it's a worst kept secret Jose Mourinho was coming in. If they don't back him, that's a huge indictment. But for me, you think I'm Ole out? I like Pochettino. I'd love Pochettino to be Man United's manager, but I wouldn't be sacking him now because it's just the wrong timing. You've got the Manchester derby, and then you've got the whole Christmas fixture list, which is just it's madness to do it now. But you don't know with these owners; they're trigger happy. This is a problem, and why should people like that be making those sort of decisions when they messed up?
Because they run the club, they own it.
Yeah, look, it's a conversation for another time. Rob, I'm going to read out a few more comments before we wrap up.
Yeah, thanks for everyone who's joined us today.
Yeah,
I know it's a hard one, but thanks for all coming on board here, especially after such a bad result and a bad performance.
It's like therapy, guys. You guys can vent and we try and give our opinion, but Nagelsmann was impressive today. He's
a great coach. He really is, great young coach. And he would play Manchester United football at Manchester United. People would really like his width. He plays with a kind of crazy five across the middle, and he doesn't rely on just strikers and number nines. He looks at a way of joining the dots. That's why I think Werner was so good at his football club, because Werner is a player that can play in the channel, can go wide, can do several different things.
You think Rashford could be quite interesting playing there?
I tell you, Rashford and Greenwood are Nagelsmann men. Nagelsmann would love those two, and he would love Bruno to kind of be a facilitator as a number 10 to make second man runs. Donny van der Beek would like Nagelsmann. I know we're talking about another coach here, and it might sound like we are talking other people.
You've got to have these discussions, Rob. Though we
have to. Yeah, we do. The masterclass is about that. The masterclass is about tactics, philosophy, and finding a way to win games. Sometimes not when you're playing well, but actually through your philosophy. And Manchester United have done that. I think the resilience factor is there now. It wasn't there 2 years ago. United were the least resilient version of Manchester United I'd ever seen. Losing games through situations where they were the better side. Now we see United fight back in scenarios where they were losing those matches and sometimes drawing them, sometimes winning them. More often than not, winning those games from losing positions. But we have to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that Manchester United have gone out the Champions League tonight. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has questions to answer. And ultimately, if he doesn't answer those questions, he will pay with it with his job. There's no doubt about that. It doesn't matter Ole in, Ole out. You know me, I'm neither. Yeah. It's a business. It's about business and it's about facts for me. And it's about trying to push United to the next level without these speed bumps and these hiccups constantly. You need smooth progress. Sometimes you can't always get that. You need to do that in the transfer market by bringing in better players. That's why I like Cavani. Cavani comes in, he's a better player than what we had to do that job.
Well, we had Igalo, didn't we? So
but Gala did okay last year. You know, you look at position for position, and United have done okay in terms of their recruitment. Like I said, it's improved from where it was under Mourinho. There's not one player from the Mourinho era, especially if you lose Pogba quite soon, you know, that one of those players has really lasted. You know, they've all gone. They've all been there 2 years and out they go. Even Lukaku, who's now doing great in Italy. But that recruitment was a nightmare, and you need a coach that gives you a good grounding with the recruitment. And Ole has certainly done that, but you need to see more progress on the pitch.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We've got a comment from Ahsoka saying United is so confounding. It's what we say. It's a Jekyll and Hyde, isn't it? I still can't fully grab how we can look like Bayern Munich one game and then Burnley, or in the same game actually, and Burnley in the same game. We do this every time. It's frustrating for me. Look, being a Man United fan is not good for your health. And this is, guys, it's like a little community. You can come in here, you can vent, you can ask your questions. And at the end of the day, look, we'll go again on Saturday. I believe we're playing Saturday or Sunday. Anyway, against City, Manchester Derby, Man United could turn up definitely and beat them. That is the way that this Man United side is. And then we'll all be getting excited again. But as Rob always says, don't get too high, don't get too low. We've got to be measured. And progress isn't linear. That is the key. We're not always just going to go up like this. We're going to have bumps in the road. But for me, at the moment, there's just too many, Rob. In the space of, maybe 6 weeks, we could look really good and then terrible again. And for me, it's difficult to see us. I mean, there's a question here from NZZ. I know you've tried to ask this a few times. Why are we not seeing more of Tu and Zabi? We need a different centre-back partnership.
Valid. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say. I mean, you were high on Axel in the summer when we spoke about transfers. I was high on Axel. I think United still need to go and get a Upamecano or someone like that. Personally, I quite like him. But let's be honest, Rob. Lindelof and Maguire haven't been poor. I don't think tonight
they've been okay this season. They've been fine this season.
Yeah, they haven't done anything which deserves to be dropped. And at the end of the day, but maybe this is where Ole has to show some character and say, right, okay, well, look, this isn't working. If I want to play a high line, you can't play Lindelof and Maguire. It's basic. So maybe he does have to turn around and say, right, Axel, you're going to play, but it's a question for Ole, isn't it, really? But for me, I would be playing Axel more now. If he's fit, he plays for me.
It was interesting, the changes he made today, because he's got a deep bench in the Champions League. He can make 5 substitutions. And he did feel that later in the game, to kind of keep the ball and to get United going in the right direction, he took Lindelof off and he brought on Axel. So that gives you a little peek into how he sees his players in that moment. Now, Lindelof is a ball-playing centre-back, but he's a bit slow. We know this. Now, he didn't have a bad game today. I certainly don't think Lindelof was really in terms of at risk of causing a problem today. But you bring on Axel, you then obviously make the switch with Brandon coming on that side, and then obviously Tim on the right. Not the kind of most balanced back line, but it was about United getting forward. I think we'll need to see more of that if United are to progress. Manchester United need the basics. We need 2 fullbacks that go forward and get assists without conceding ground. We need 2 centre-backs, and one of them has to be quick. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can't get away with 2 slow ones. You can get away with 1 slow one. You can get away with Maguire +1 or Lindelof +1. But that +1 better be quick. And in midfield, you can sometimes play with destructive midfielders. You can play with Fred in there. You can play with McTominay. You can play with Matic. But my God, you need a Pogba in there at times.
You need Pogba, Rob.
And if we lose Paul Pogba now, and let's be honest, there's every chance we will. He's 18 months of his contract's about to run down. And I do believe that the reason why this has all happened in the last 24, 48 hours, it goes back to last week, by the way. That's when Mino made the comments. But the idea is that Manchester United really don't want to play Pogba what they probably would have paid him a year ago. So this is the impasse. So Pogba will probably be sold, because if they sell him, they'll get 70, 80, 90 million for him. They might have to even haggle on a 50 million or 60 million. When you say that 50 million, they did pay 50 million for Aaron Wan-Bissaka about 10 minutes ago. So I don't think they'll take 50 million for Paul Pogba when he brings in so much revenue in shirt sales for other football clubs. They will sell him on top of that. You know, they'll use that as his thing, his superstar status, being the big don at Adidas. So they'll sell him for a biggish fee, but maybe not the super huge fee. But if you sell him, you have to have a ball player in there. United haven't got one. You have to go and buy one. So if you haven't got one in there, Donny van der Beek is not a ball player. We've just said it in the last one that he is a number 10, or he plays as a kind of 9.5 or a Frank Lampard. That is his kind of style. United need to have ball players that can play football, and we say that almost every week. And then when you get to the top, yeah, they're all quick. Yeah, you know, Martial can do his thing. We know what Mason can do. We know what Marcus can do. But again, there's not this kind of retention of like cleverness or sneakiness or kind of these joining the dots, as I always talk about. That's a problem. That can only come through transfer windows and maybe through youngsters coming through that are technically better than what you've got. That can happen. We've got Medjbury obviously making waves and coming through, and youngsters, Palestri coming into the team, Diallo coming into the team in January. But that's a process. That takes time. United need to buy in January, but I probably think they won't, because they haven't got the money. What you might see is that you lose Paul Pogba in January, and if you lose him, that money will probably get banked. And then that is a problem for Ole, because he's losing his ball player. United was so much better when Pogba came on today. Doesn't matter if you love or hate him, or whether you fall Paul Pogba, or whether you like Mina Reala, or any of that stuff. It doesn't matter. United lack ball players. You can't win a league. You can't get up the league purely with destructive midfielders.
I think most people know that, Rob, and that's the problem. And in games like this, in the PSG game, I can understand if you're going to go for McFred, because that's what they're called basically, aren't they? They come as a pair. If you're going to play both of them together, then fine. You're trying to get a result. But if you can't even get the result, you're trying to play pragmatically, not doing it, then it's a problem. Transition from defense to attack has been a problem. For me, I'm a big advocate of Paul Pogba. Yes, he might not have lived up to the heights, and that's a different conversation. We could be here forever talking about that. But he's that one player. We saw in that second half against West Ham what he can offer. And he plays that double pivot. I know it's going to be controversial. Better than Donny van der Beek right now, because he knows the system. He's played it longer. It's going to take Donny time. But he's a different player to Donny van der Beek. So if United, I don't trust United or the board to go and sell Paul Pogba and then go and get an adequate replacement.
Yeah, it feels like a lot of the players' brains are this big. Yeah, that's what it feels like. Paul Pogba's brain is this big. Yeah, he sees pictures on the pitch that other players do not see. Now, it doesn't mean he's always successful. He will make a stray pass. There might be times when he gives the ball away. But when you look at his stats, it reflects in his brain power. You don't really see that with other United players. Maybe sometimes with Bruno, certainly with his returns in terms of assists and goals. But you don't really see that maybe with Marcus, Mason, Anthony Martial, certainly not really with Fred and McTominay, with Matic. You need players with bigger brains. You need players who can put the ball on the deck and just do stuff. And United lack that. You must even think today in the last 10 minutes when they got those 2 goals back, I had no confidence that they were going to string together a kind of world-class move to get that opportunity. And who was it who crossed the ball in when they nearly scored? It was Pogba.
Yeah,
so,
you
know, it's a fantastic cross, and they nearly nicked it. And that would have been amazing. But we would have still been talking about exactly the same issues, even if the score was 3-3 tonight.
But as well, Rob, for me, I would have said exactly what I said last week. I said, I got out of jail. And I would have said the same thing here. A short spell. And this is the point. This is why I get frustrated, because yes, there's deficiencies, but I can see the quality in this squad. If United can go and blow teams away in the space of 20 minutes, imagine if they could sustain that for... You're not going to ever dominate a game for 90 minutes. That's just not how it works. But, 70 minutes of a game, the majority of a game. This United side, no one's going to want to play against them. So, for me, that's the frustration. But I'm going to read out
what the board. Yeah, sorry, that's what the board will need to decide if Ole is getting the most out of the team. Like what you said there is absolutely accurate, and I think that they will get to a point where they'll say, has Ole taken Paul Pogba and got the most out of him? Well, Paul Pogba sat on the bench for most of the season because he's been injured and coming back in the team. But Edward would look at that and say, well, Pogba's our best player. You've got to find a way to get him in there, and that's not really happened. That's an indictment on Ole as well. He's going to have to carry that.
Absolutely. Last comment, guys. Honestly, Your engagement has been brilliant. It's been like therapy. Some really brilliant comments and views and questions. Last one, Kyra. I'm surprised Ole, who knows the club better than most, can't get the hunger in these players. It's a difficult one, Rob. We've talked about personality and mentality a lot today, but a manager does have to inspire players. But once they cross the white line, they should take responsibility for their own game, for their 5-yard passes, for their decision making. And if they can't do that, then they're not good enough for Man United. And as you say, we need to go and buy better players with more of this, as you're talking about, that brain power. But when does it become an Ole thing or a manager thing and a player thing? Because a lot of it gets misplaced. So you see some people purely blaming the manager, which is not fair. And then you see people completely absolving the manager and saying it's on the players. But at the end of the day, when you're playing for this club and you have certain responsibilities or certain standards you have to keep, neither side, for me, neither the players or the manager right now are upholding those high standards that I expect to see from Man United.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I always say it's both. Always. There are times when I think under Mourinho, where he had what I believed was a good squad, but his tactics were not really reflective of what those players could do, and he was maybe regressing them. And you could see that. You could actually see that. And I think that was his ultimate demise, was that he kind of pulled back more, tried to be more defensive, and then the attacking players in the team were really constricted. So you can look at that and maybe lay that at Mourinho's door. But of course, the players have to perform to whatever the manager's expectations are. I think when you look at Ole definitely wants to play progressive football. I've got no doubt about that. He would love to play 4-3-3 every week and go hammer teams 5-0 like the old Man United used to do. But like we just said, that's not really what the old Man United was. The old Man United was a much more controlled monster that could beat you 5-0, but most of the weeks would just play the chess match, win 2 or 3-0, 2-1, some games 1-0, get over the line in matches and get the points. And when you do that, then you win league titles. That's how you do it. I think, just to address the question there, I know lots of players, footballers, and we have discussions about these things in terms of what they see the game as today as maybe what the game was yesterday. And there's no doubt to me, I think that professional footballers of the modern day are harder working, more dedicated, and 100% more into it as a sport than players from yesteryear. Now, that's not to put those players down from yesteryear, but they all like to pint. They all like to kind of knock off training after an hour. And it was
got sports science.
It was all part of the culture in those days. But winning became a combative thing. So you got on a football pitch, and there was a team that you had needle with, like, say, Arsenal with United in years gone by. You could just get yourself up. Didn't matter how fit you were. You were just going to go into it and throw yourself into that. And that was part of the Manchester United culture of that moment. We don't have that in football anymore. Teams don't have that needle. At the end of games, they all hug each other and, go for dinner down Rio's restaurant in Manchester. They're all friends. They all know each other club to club to club. Those things have gone, but players are more professional. But it's about performance inconsistency. And we see this Manchester United team fail at that miserably all the time. They can do it, but it's not really about the culture. I think Ole's got the culture back. I think these players want to win. I really do. But in the first 20 minutes of a game like today, don't concede. Put your life on it. It's not about commitment and motivation.
And it's an away game at the European rival decider. That's what you meant to do. That's just basics, Rob.
Like I said, if I'm Aaron, I'm thinking, people are questioning me whether I should be Man United's right back. I'm going to be perfect today. I'm going to be perfect. And I don't see that, say, in his game as an individual, his personality coming through. It feels like his personality is really small. And it feels like Luke Shaw's personality is really small. And it feels like Victor Lindelof's personality is a little bit bigger, but not that big. And then you see Maguire, and his personality is a little bit bigger, but not big enough. So I think there's kind of a measurable kind of point that you can put to the players and say, why are these things not improving? And I think it is down to personality. And personality to improve and strive to be better has to come from really deep inside you. And you have to produce it on the training pitch and then replicate it on the football field. This Manchester United team can do it. It doesn't always do it. And if they do not improve in the next few weeks, the manager will lose his job.
And that's probably the best place to end, guys. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Really difficult night, Rob. But we've got a massive game on the weekend, and we've got to look forward. Whether you're Ole in or Ole out, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that United get the result. And I just want to say thank you for joining me today, Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cheers as always, Haider.
And thank you to all your great comments, guys. This is the Masterclass. Will be live after every single game. So we really, really want you guys to get involved and help to spread the show around to everyone. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone, because we're doing this for you and we're trying to be as non-reactionary and as formative as possible. So thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you on the weekend.